Imagine a country thrown into chaos, streets filled with confusion, people unsure of what tomorrow might bring, the air thick with tension and uncertainty. That was China during the Cultural Revolution, a time when the very fabric of society was being torn apart and restitched in a new, often brutal pattern. From 1966 to 1976, the country went through a period of immense upheaval. This decade was marked by radical changes, driven by the vision of one man, Chairman Mao Zedong, and his desire to enforce a new ideological purity. It was a time of political purges and social unrest. The Red Guards, fervent supporters of Mao, roamed the streets, targeting those deemed counter-revolutionary. No one was safe from suspicion or accusation. Traditional values were under attack. Ancient artifacts, symbols of China's rich cultural heritage, were destroyed. The old ways were seen as obstacles to progress and had to be eradicated. Schools and universities were closed, education was disrupted as intellectuals were persecuted, and students were encouraged to challenge their teachers. The academic world was turned upside down. Millions of people were persecuted. Intellectuals, artists, and anyone with ties to the old regime faced public humiliation, imprisonment, or worse. Families were torn apart, and trust within communities was shattered. It was a dark chapter in China's history. The scars left by this period are still felt today, as the nation continues to grapple with the consequences of those tumultuous years. The Cultural Revolution left deep scars on Chinese society. The psychological and emotional toll on the population was immense, with many still haunted by memories of loss and suffering. It is crucial to understand this period to appreciate China's journey. The Cultural Revolution was not just a political movement, it was a profound social upheaval that reshaped the nation in countless ways. By studying the Cultural Revolution, we can learn from the past and build a better future. Understanding the mistakes and the pain of this era can guide us in creating a society that values both progress and humanity. Mao Zedong, the leader of China, initiated the Cultural Revolution. He aimed to solidify communism in China. He wanted to purge capitalist and traditional elements from Chinese society. Mao believed that China was veering off the path of true communism. He saw threats in intellectuals and party officials. He feared they were becoming too powerful. He called for a revolution to cleanse the party and the country. Mao's vision was a classless society. He wanted absolute loyalty to the Communist Party. He believed that by purging dissent, China would become a stronger socialist nation. Mao called upon the youth to carry out his vision. This led to the formation of the Red Guards. These were mostly students and young people. They were tasked with purging counter-revolutionaries. The Red Guards were fanatically loyal to Mao. They were easily manipulated by propaganda. They carried out their duties with zeal, and often with violence. The Red Guards became symbols of the Cultural Revolution. They held rallies, destroyed cultural artifacts, and persecuted intellectuals. Their actions had a devastating impact on Chinese society. Education was a prime target during the Cultural Revolution. Schools and universities were shut down. Intellectuals were persecuted. Mao believed that intellectuals were a threat to the revolution. He saw them as elitist and detached from the common people. As a result, many teachers and professors were removed from their positions. Students were encouraged to denounce their teachers. Many were sent to the countryside for re-education. The Cultural Revolution led to a lost generation in China. Millions of young people were denied a proper education. Section 5. The economy in shambles. The Cultural Revolution also had a devastating impact on China's economy. Industrial production plummeted. Agriculture suffered as farmers were pulled away from their fields. The chaos and instability discouraged foreign investment. The constant struggle sessions and purges disrupted economic activity. The Cultural Revolution left China economically weakened. It took years for the country to recover from the damage. The pursuit of ideological purity came at a high cost. Section 6. The beginning of the end. By the early 1970s, the Cultural Revolution began to lose momentum. The chaos and violence had taken their toll. Even Mao realized that the situation was spiraling out of control. In 1971, Lin Biao, Mao's designated successor, died in a plane crash under mysterious circumstances. This event shook the foundations of the Cultural Revolution. The death of Lin Biao raised questions about the revolution's direction. It also exposed power struggles within the Communist Party. Section 7. Picking up the pieces. The Cultural Revolution, a decade-long period of political and social upheaval, left China in a state of disarray. The nation was grappling with the aftermath of widespread chaos, economic stagnation, and a fractured society. The Cultural Revolution officially ended with Mao Zedong's death in 1976. His passing marked the end of an era characterized by radical policies and intense political campaigns that had deeply affected every aspect of Chinese life. This marked the beginning of a new era for China. The country stood at a crossroads, with the opportunity to rebuild and redefine its future. The leadership recognized the need for significant changes to steer the nation towards stability and growth. Deng Xiaoping, a pragmatic leader, emerged from the political turmoil. Unlike his predecessors, Deng was focused on practical solutions rather than ideological purity. He understood that for China to recover, it needed to embrace reform and modernization. He initiated economic and social reforms. These reforms were aimed at revitalizing the economy, which had been severely damaged during the Cultural Revolution. Deng's policies included the introduction of market mechanisms and the decentralization of economic control. Deng's reforms aimed to modernize China and improve people's living standards. The focus was on increasing productivity, encouraging innovation, and improving infrastructure. These changes began to transform the urban landscape and the daily lives of Chinese citizens. He opened up the country to foreign investment and encouraged private enterprise. This was a significant shift from the previous policies of isolation and state control. Foreign companies brought in capital, technology, and expertise, which were crucial for China's development. He also implemented policies to rebuild the education system. The Cultural Revolution had severely disrupted education, with schools closed and intellectuals persecuted. Deng's policies aimed to restore the education system, emphasizing the importance of knowledge and skills for the nation's future. The post-Cultural Revolution era was a time of healing and rebuilding. People began to reconstruct their lives, communities, and the nation as a whole. There was a collective effort to move forward and create a better future. China began to confront the dark legacy of the Cultural Revolution. Memorials and exhibitions were established to remember the past and educate future generations. This period of reflection was crucial for the nation to understand its history and ensure that such a tumultuous period would never be repeated. Section 8. Echoes of the Past. The Cultural Revolution may be over, but its legacy continues to shape China. The country still grapples with the trauma of that period. There is a reluctance to discuss the Cultural Revolution openly. However, it is essential to remember the past to avoid repeating its mistakes. The Cultural Revolution serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked power. It highlights the importance of critical thinking, free speech, and the rule of law. The lessons of the Cultural Revolution are relevant not only to China, but to the entire world. Section 9. The importance of remembering. In the annals of history, there are events that stand as stark reminders of the depths of human suffering and the heights of human resilience. The Cultural Revolution in China is one such event. It is a chapter that demands our attention, reflection, and understanding. We must never forget the human cost of the Cultural Revolution. The decade-long upheaval, which began in 1966, saw the persecution of millions. Intellectuals, artists, and ordinary citizens were targeted in a wave of ideological purges. Families were torn apart and communities were shattered. Millions of people were persecuted, imprisoned, tortured, and killed. Countless lives were destroyed. The Cultural Revolution was not just a political movement, it was a human tragedy on an immense scale. The stories of those who suffered are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, but also a stark warning of the dangers of unchecked power and fanaticism. It is our duty to remember the victims and learn from their suffering. Memorials and museums serve as places of reflection, where we can honor those who endured unimaginable hardships. By remembering, we acknowledge their pain and ensure that their stories are not forgotten. The Cultural Revolution is a reminder that even in the 21st century, we are not immune to the forces of extremism and intolerance. The echoes of the past can still be heard in today's world, where similar ideologies threaten to disrupt societies and infringe upon human rights. It is a call to action to defend human rights, promote education, and foster a more just and compassionate world. We must be vigilant and proactive in our efforts to combat intolerance and extremism. Education is a powerful tool in this fight, helping to build understanding and empathy among people. By studying history, we can learn from the mistakes of the past and work towards a brighter future. Understanding the causes and consequences of the Cultural Revolution can help us prevent similar tragedies. It is through education and remembrance that we can build a world where such events are never repeated. Let us commit to preserving the memory of those who suffered, and to using their stories as a guide for creating a more just and compassionate society.